These are the first pictures we have in. This is from Somerset County, Pennsylvania. This is where the United Airlines flight, I believe it is 176, went down. I'm sorry, I'm correcting. United Airlines 93. This was a Boeing 757 bound from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. It crashed in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, near the town of Shanksville, south of Pittsburgh. We're told about 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, David, I just spoke with a 911 operator at the emergency dispatching center in Greensburg, and he tells quite an amazing story this morning. He says at about 9:58 this morning, his center, his emergency dispatching center, which is based in Greensburg, received a cellular telephone call from a man claiming to be a passenger on this United Airlines flight. He said at this point that the plane was being hijacked, and he was back near the bathroom of the airplane. He repeatedly said this is not a hoax, that the plane was being hijacked, that he needed help, and 911 operators at this point were trying to gather more information from him. The gentleman then relayed that there had been an explosion. He just heard an explosion on the plane. He saw a cloud of white smoke, and then seconds after that last transmission on that cellular telephone, the gentleman, the line went dead, and 911 lost the cellular caller at that point. That was it.
All that you really see there is a huge crater. You can't even see it very well from our vantage point. A huge black gaping hole, as investigators are describing it. There is a lot of debris, most of it very small pieces of black charred remains. The FBI tonight is making a huge grid, and tomorrow morning it will begin what it calls a painstaking process of gathering the evidence. At this point, they say they're treating this as a crime, though they won't go so far as to say it is indeed an act of terrorism. If indeed the plane had successfully turned around and headed back toward Washington, and now it appears there would have been one more target. It did not make it, which is fortunate for Washington, unfortunate for the 45 people on board. No survivors, Peter.
Tom, I'm on a country road that goes between the towns of Lambertsville and Shanksville in Pennsylvania, and beyond all of these lights you see, the glare of the media satellite trucks, it is a very dark night here in the country, but it is very busy. About a half a mile to a mile or so beyond, just over my shoulder, sort of where you see all those trucks headed down, in an open field of an old strip mine, is where lies the wreckage of United Flight 93, which of course, as you all have been reporting, took off from Newark, destined for San Francisco, never got there. 38 passengers, 7 crew, no survivors. The debris here is spread over a 3 to 4 mile radius, which has now been completely sealed off and is being treated, according to the FBI, as a crime scene. Governor Tom Ridge made some remarks earlier at a press conference. He had flown over the site. He said the emergency response here was immediate. He also said, and I don't know whether or not you all are able to see pictures of this, but this is one of those cases where the pictures really do tell the story, that sort of the most horrifying aspect of this particular crash scene is how little debris is visible. There is a large crater in the ground, and I'm hoping that you all are seeing it as I'm talking about it, but that's really all you see is a large crater in the ground and just tiny, tiny bits of debris. There has been at least one report that the investigators out there, and there are hundreds of them, as I said tonight, have found nothing larger than a phone book.
There were 45 people on board the hijacked United Airlines 757 when it nosedived into the ground at the edge of this old strip mine. Paula Pluta saw it all from her front yard and ran to the place the plane crashed.
Little pieces of metal. There wasn't anything there but little pieces of metal. I unfortunately did not see bodies, because I don't think I could have handled that, but just the impact of what's going on in the nation. And here, it's just very disheartening because you don't realize how close it can get.
No piece of wreckage was larger than a telephone book. No identifiable bodies were found. Just moments before Flight 93 crashed here, a passenger managed a cell phone call to the local 911 dispatcher. "We're being hijacked," he screamed. "We're going down." And then he died.
And I immediately said a prayer too, because I knew that there was no life left on that plane.
When Alice Hogland's phone rang in San Francisco, it was her son, Mark Bingham, calling from his seat near the front of the aircraft.
He said, "I want to let you know I love you." And I said, "Well, I love you too, Mark." Well, what he said was, "I'm on a flight from Newark to San Francisco, and 3 guys have taken over the aircraft, and they say they have a bomb." And I asked him, "Mark, who are they?" And he didn't get a chance to answer me. The phone went dead.
The most intriguing call of all was Thomas Burnett's call to his wife, Dina, saying he believed the flight was doomed. He told her he and 2 other passengers planned to do something about it. "I love you, honey," he said. United 93 didn't make it to Camp David or downtown Washington. It crashed here in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Flight 93, with 45 people on board, crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Several people on that flight made cell phone calls to families. Thomas Burnett made 4 calls to his wife.
On the last phone call, he said that a group of them were getting ready to do something. And then he hung up and he never called back.
Did he say anything to you personally?
He did not. And that, I know the reason he didn't is he was fighting to come home. He had every intention of being here that night.
Analysts say the recovery of the Flight 93 cockpit voice recorder could determine what exactly happened.
Yeah, we want to take our viewers live to Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Our Brian Cabell is standing by. This, of course, is the site where United Airlines Flight 93 crashed on its way from Newark to San Francisco, crashed on Tuesday. And I understand in this investigation there's some breaking news. Brian, what can you tell us?
Well, Darren, in the last hour or so, the FBI and the state police here have confirmed that they have cordoned off a second area about 6 to 8 miles away from the crater here where this plane went down. This is apparently another debris site, which raises a number of questions. Why would debris from the plane, and they identified it specifically as being from this plane, why would debris be located 6 miles away? Could it have blown that far away? Seems highly unlikely. Almost all the debris found at this site is within 100 yards, 200 yards away, so it raises some questions.
What happened? We haven't been able to determine, but we have a little bit of circumstantial evidence. First of all, yesterday we discovered that the passengers on board the plane, through phone calls to their families, had made the decision based on the knowledge that other planes had been hijacked, and they knew that one of the planes had gone into the World Trade Center. In a sense, they knew they were destined for something along those lines, made the decision to try to attack the hijackers. Now, we don't know exactly what happened next. We do know it did crash into that rural field, and we also know today that there is another debris field between 2 and 6 miles to the north of that crash site. What does that mean? That means something fell off the airplane before it crashed. There's no question about that.
United 93 went down here in the Pennsylvania woods. Additional pieces have now been found 2.5 miles away in a place called Indian Lake. FBI agents recovered debris.
They're saying that it was part of the fuselage from the plane. We found some plastic. We found some letters with some addresses and names on from California.
State police sealed off the site. In Washington, FBI Director Robert Mueller and Attorney General John Ashcroft.
What happened to cause that plane to crash where it is?
I think it's fair to say that we're unable to comment on that.
There's been a lot of questions regarding the crater itself. According to people who have been involved in these investigations, such as the NTSB and the state police, when the plane goes in on the ground, there's a tendency obviously for an awful lot of dirt to be moved and dust. As you can tell from the roads around here, it's a very dusty area. After the plane moves on, there's a film of dust that settles. It's very difficult to tell the actual depth of the crater because of that, the amount of dust there, and also what evidence is in the crater. So to the naked eye, there's not a whole lot there now. That's why we have archaeologists who are here on scene and will be working on that site so that we can properly recover that information.
The FBI is briefing now in Pennsylvania, and we want to take that.
Right is Dr. Dennis Dirkmaat, professor of anthropology at Mercyhurst College. To my left is Coroner Miller from Somerset County. Something I want to correct right off the bat. There were some discrepancies, and for my part of it, I apologize. There was no military involvement in what happened here. I believe I might have misspoke with concerning potential for a bomb on the plane. And if that was the case, and I apologize for that, but there was no military involvement. I hope that ends that line of questioning and we can move forward with other issues. The other issue that came up this morning that I want to address is there was some concern regarding the locations of Indian Lake, the distance from the scene at the crime scene, and also New Baltimore. Indian Lake is approximately 2.5 miles. The entire lake is approximately 2.5 miles from the crime scene, the actual site of the crime scene. New Baltimore is approximately 8 miles from the crime scene. At the outset of this investigation, the Indian Lake was a part of that crime scene that was staked off by the Pennsylvania State Police. Early this morning, it was discovered that there was some debris in New Baltimore. There was a question at the 10:30 news conference regarding whether it was feasible that debris from a crash at this location could travel 8 miles. After review this morning by both the NTSB and the FBI, they reviewed what was found at the New Baltimore site. They determined that it was all things that would, very light materials such as paper, nylon, thin nylon, and things that would, if in the air with a wind, would easily blow. Researching what was going on with the wind and the location at the time of the plane going into the ground, there was a 9-knot wind in a southeasterly direction. Both Indian Lake and New Baltimore are southeast of the crime scene at that 2.5 miles and 8 miles. According to the NTSB, not only is it plausible that debris from this crash could be in both these locations, it is probable that this stuff is debris from the crash that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. There's no evidence has been uncovered as of yet of any other second plane or of anything else being, or of a second crash or of any other plane being involved. And as I mentioned earlier, there's absolutely unequivocally, there's no military involvement in the plane going down.